Forget everything you thought you knew about love and marriage in history. In the Roman world, an emperor could sleep with both men and women without being considered cheating, and it was even seen as normal. But what happens when someone with supreme power chooses a submissive role in the bedroom, or craves to even change their gender? Today, we will uncover 20 bizarre, shocking, hidden truths about love and power that Roman history tried to conceal. Get ready to unveil secrets that once shook an entire empire. Roman sexuality. Ancient Romans did not classify sexuality by gender as we do today. They had no concepts of gay, bisexual, or heterosexual. Instead, their focus was on the power dynamics in sexual acts. Who was the active party, the giver, and who was the passive party, the receiver? In a rigid patriarchal society, a free, high-status Roman man was expected to always maintain pudicitia, sexual purity, meaning he must always play the active, dominant role, both in the bedroom and in society. Same-sex relationships were acceptable as long as the man of higher status was the active, dominant one. For slaves, youths, or those considered infamous by society, like actors, prostitutes, it was normal for them to play a passive role and cause no stir. What was truly concerning and shameful was if a high-status man willingly took a passive, submissive role in any relationship. Marriage is a transaction, love is something else. Another bizarre truth is that Romans completely separated the concepts of marriage from personal love, desire. Marriage served a social function, establishing family relations, producing heirs, and consolidating power. Meanwhile, love and desire were merely means to pursue personal passions. This meant a Roman man could sleep with his wife one night and with a male partner the next without violating any social norms, without being considered cheating. Same-sex relationships, an unintended contraception for royalty. In Roman times, where contraceptive methods did not yet exist and childbirth was the leading cause of death for women, a man having extramarital sexual relations, whether with another woman or a man, could also be seen as a potential form of birth control. This was a way for them to satisfy personal desires without putting their official wife at high risk of dying in childbirth. This shows that behind sexual freedom lay grim, practical considerations regarding health and reproduction. Please note, this information is derived from our previous conversation history and is not directly from the current source, but aligns with the context. Pederasty, not just sex, but also a youth advisor role. Pederasty, or sexual relationships between adults and adolescents, was a common and widely accepted practice in Roman society. Surprisingly, ancient Romans did not consider this age gap problematic. This was not merely a sexual relationship, it was also a form of mentorship, helping high-status adolescents forge important connections and be introduced into the senatorial class. For members of the upper class, pederastic relationships were even considered a rite of passage into adulthood. Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar is known as one of the most powerful men in the world, who transformed Rome from a republic into a mighty empire. However, a strange, even most embarrassing truth for the Roman public about Caesar was that he preferred to play the passive role, meaning the receiver in same-sex relationships. The ancient historian Suetonius recorded rumors of Caesar having a sexual relationship with King Nicomedes IV of Bithynia, in which Caesar was the receiver. This led the Roman public to constantly wonder, a man with supreme power, yet choosing a role they considered feminine in the bedroom. This truly shook Roman perceptions of masculinity and power. Could this choice have been an expression of absolute power, where an emperor could do anything he wanted, even if it went against social norms? Emperor Trajan. Trajan is remembered as a great warrior emperor who expanded the Roman Empire to its military peak. This masculine, powerful image is often associated with traditional notions of straightforward and dignified men. However, historian Cassius Dio explicitly noted that Trajan was addicted to boys and wine. What is surprising is that these relationships were not severely criticized, because according to Dio, he drank as much as he wished and remained sober, and in his relations with boys he harmed no one. This suggests that his same-sex relationships were considered appropriate and disciplined for a military man. Not only that, but Trajan also had an unexpectedly intimate relationship with his future successor Hadrien right on military campaigns. Historians mentioned that Hadrien was favored by Trajan and participated freely in drinking with Trajan and was later granted many great rewards. Trajan bestowed many privileges upon Hadrien, important positions, wealth, an extremely important imperial diamond, and finally, most shockingly, he adopted Hadrien as his son. What happens in Germania stays in Germania. This playful phrase partly reflects the reality of same-sex relationships in the Roman army. Soldiers were often forbidden from legal marriage, but generals often traveled with close friends and young protégés, so the development of sexual relationships was not surprising, especially during distant campaigns. Emperor Hadrien. Hadrien was one of Rome's 5 good emperors, famous for his grand architectural works and stable rule. However, he was a rare exception among Roman emperors, as he seemed only interested in men. Although he married a woman for political reasons, he and his wife had no children, and most historians believe this marriage was never consummated. Instead, he openly expressed his preferences by writing many sensual poems about his male lovers. Among Hadrian's relationships, there was one lover who captured his heart and left a tragic mark on history. Antinous, a beautiful youth from Anatolia. Hadrian ensured Antinous received a good education, and the two traveled extensively together for 7 years. This love was so profound that they even hunted lions together in Egypt, an adventure recorded in poetry. Tragedy struck when Antinous mysteriously drowned in the Nile River. A remarkable story tells that Antinous' death may have been a voluntary sacrifice to save Hadrian. A prophet had said that the ailing Hadrian would die unless someone willingly sacrificed themselves for him. No one in the emperor's retinue dared to step forward, until Antinous bravely stood up and willingly offered himself. After Antinous' death, Hadrian displayed extreme grief, surpassing even that for his own sister. He ordered the construction of countless monuments to Antinous throughout the empire, founded a city named Antinopolis in Egypt, minted coins bearing Antinos' image, and even deified Antinous, ordering his worship as a god throughout the Roman Empire. This provoked criticism from the public due to the lavishness of the funeral and his mourning of Antinous more than his own relatives. But Hadrian's grief shows that love, whether same-sex or heterosexual, can be profound and intense, transcending all social norms of the time. Nero, the brutal and tyrannical emperor, was infamous for his bizarre and violent sexual behavior. One of the most shocking truths is that he married 2 men at the same time, breaking all sexual and social norms. Nero forced Pythagoras, a freed slave, to participate in an unusual wedding ceremony. In this ceremony, the horrifying detail was that Nero played the role of the bride, wearing a veil, having a dowry, and a bridal bed. This utterly perplexed the Roman public, as the emperor, who held supreme power, chose a feminine and submissive role. After the death of his wife Poppaea Sabina, Nero then married Sporus, a young slave who resembled his deceased wife. This time, Nero played the active masculine role, satisfying public expectations. But to ensure that, he committed a barbaric act. Nero castrated Sporus. This not only highlights Nero's brutality, but also shows that in the eyes of the Romans, his greatest scandal was not merely his same-sex relationships, but his complete inversion of concepts of power roles and dominance in sexual behavior. When discussing Nero, one cannot overlook the most extreme rumors, which show the extent to which his enemies were willing to slander his reputation. Besides the shocking behaviors already mentioned, a contemporary historian even wrote that Nero and his mother Agrippina had an incestuous relationship. Although modern historians believe that this is almost certainly untrue, it was the kind of information commonly spread about him after his death. This shows that in the eyes of the Romans, Nero's breaking of social norms was even more terrifying than we can imagine. Emperor Elgabilus. Elgabilus, the emperor who ascended the throne at age 14, was infamous for his bizarre and insane behaviors, especially his obsession with gender and his sexual role. He not only wore full makeup like a Roman woman with blush white skin, wigs and crowns, but also shaved his entire body and displayed feminine mannerisms, a graceful walk, a high-pitched voice. He even participated in women's public baths, completely depilating himself to resemble them. Elgabilus married many women, even a Vestal virgin, which horrified the Romans. However, his goal was to learn how to please men like a woman. He also openly practiced prostitution in taverns and brothels. The peak of his depravity was that he even set up a room in the palace to engage in this behavior, standing naked at the door of the room, shaking curtains and inviting passers-by with a high-pitched voice. Elgabilus also took a man named Heracles as his husband and willingly played the role of a wife. He not only performed oral sexual acts in public, which was considered extremely shameful for a Roman man, especially an emperor, but also rejoiced when Heracles beat him for having relations with others, often appearing at court with bruises and black eyes. Even more astonishingly, he appointed men to political positions based on the size of their genitalia, even sending people throughout the empire to search for desirable men, according to this criterion. A chilling example is the story of Aurelius Zoticus, an athlete from Smyrna, famous for his exceptional size, who was abducted from a competition and brought to Rome with a huge escort, simply because Elgabilus wanted to see and have relations with him. Elgabilus's obsession with gender did not stop there. He not only publicly admitted to being circumcised, but also began seeking doctors to perform gender reassignment surgery on him, wanting to replace his male genitalia with a vagina. Historian Cassius Dio even used the pronoun she when referring to Elgabilus, emphasizing that he could not be a man. Some modern scholars suggest that he might be one of the first recorded transgender individuals in history. Elgabilus's abuse of power and shocking behavior ultimately led to extreme outrage from the Praetorian Guard. He was murdered along with his mother at the age of 18 while trying to escape by hiding in a chest. The bodies of both mother and son were stripped, dragged through the city of Rome, and then thrown into the Tiber River. This horrible death was the inevitable consequence of crossing all boundaries, a tragic testament to how an individual can be destroyed by power when they cannot reconcile themselves with societal expectations. Emperor Tiberius. Tiberius is known as one of the emperors with a complex personality and a period of reclusive later life, accused of brutal behavior. However, a far more disturbing truth is that he was one of the emperors accused of the most severe sexual abuse against his lovers, particularly a preference for very young boys. The details of his behavior with children are considered extremely disturbing by modern standards. Tiberius's actions, though shocking to society today, are a grim reminder of how absolute power can lead to decadence and abuse, especially when there are no clear moral boundaries. What lessons can history draw from the darkest aspects of absolute power and the vulnerability of the powerless against the abuse of authority? We have now together unveiled the horrifying and bizarre secrets of sex and power in the Roman Empire. Clearly, their concepts of sexuality were very different, focusing on power and role rather than gender. Many emperors had complex sexual lives, from accepted relationships to shocking behaviors that challenged all norms. These stories show that power, love, and the judgment of the era are always an unending struggle. Furthermore, they remind us that history often has bias in its sources of information, and many details have been hidden or distorted due to changing moral concepts over time. Historians often tend to overlook or sweep these sensitive aspects under the rug, but it is precisely these details that reveal a more authentic, vivid, and human historical picture of those who once held supreme power. What do you think about these secrets of the Roman emperors? Do they change your perspective on history? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other unique and dramatic history stories from Mr. Q. See you in the next video, where we will continue to unveil the hidden truths behind history.